yourself and say a little bit about the kids and what they're involved in at Nido?
Mm-hmm. So I have 3 kids, Amelia who's 18, Florencia who's 16, and Christian who's 13. The girls, in terms of sports, are just involved in dance. Both of them dance on the hip-hop team and the jazz team. And Christian is involved in basketball now. He's been involved in soccer in the past as well.
Nice. And the whole time that Christian has been involved in sports has been at Nido?
No, he actually started with organized sports just a little bit where we lived before in California. Although it wasn't that organized, but he played 1 year of like youth soccer and 1 year of Little League when he was in 2nd grade.
Okay, and then he moved.
And then he moved to Nido in 3rd grade. And so during elementary school, the sports at Nido are really laid back. They're just after school activities, usually 2 days a week. So he did, part of the year he did soccer and part of the year he did basketball, but non-competitive, skill building focus and just for fun. And then when he went into middle school in 6th grade, he joined the middle school basketball team, and that's what he's been involved in since then. Now he's in 8th grade.
So Nido is the international school here in Santiago. So the sports at Nido don't become competitive until middle school?
Mm-hmm. Until 6th grade, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences you saw? I know he was young when he was doing soccer in the league in the States, but some of the differences that you saw between the youth programs there and what you had here, especially when you came directly into Nido.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in the States, well, the girls also did actually youth programs in the States for soccer. And for sure in the States, they were much more intense and very common that kids would at very young ages be involved in a number of different things. We actually delayed a lot with Christian. He was in a Waldorf school, so he was in a very alternative kind of education, which does not believe in organized sports before middle school. And I do agree with that, so I was trying to avoid it, but because we knew we were moving and he really loved baseball, I wanted to give him the experience of baseball. So when we knew we were moving, I let him do Little League baseball. And he was so excited. It was actually really interesting when he joined that team because the other kids on the team, he was only in 2nd grade, but the other kids have been doing Little League baseball for, I don't know, quite a few years already. And he's 7 or 8.
Yeah, so they could have started at like 5 or 4, yeah.
And they were kind of burned out. They weren't very enthusiastic. And he was like super into it, super enthusiastic, loved it. And then we moved, so he never played baseball again. But I certainly think that waiting, like in that regard, like gave him a totally different perspective than the other kids.
And is that kind of part of your rationale between, you just mentioned that you don't really believe in having like the structured sport until middle school. Is that your rationale behind that?
Well, I do think the kids should be playing when they're younger. I think they should have more time outside and more time to play. And that it should be more unstructured. And skill building maybe a little bit, but even then, I mean, the Waldorf philosophy is that kids should be developing their body awareness and their strength and their energy and their overall fitness. And then once they have all of that, the rest of it comes very quickly. So yes, you do things with balls, but you don't play a competitive game. And that they also need to learn about their body and about all of that and how to work with kids and how to get along and how to share and all of that before they're ready to work together on a team to achieve a common goal. So I personally think that it's better that way. I was very happy that Nido had non-competitive sports in the younger years.
And how has he dealt with the switch from playing non-competitive, still playing sports, but in a non-competitive way, into now? I know like last season, I think they had kind of a tough season with the basketball
they have a lot of tough seasons. Yeah, I mean, he's really enthusiastic about it overall. I mean, he's a kid. He gets frustrated in the moment or after a game or whatever, or because of the ref was totally unfair, typical stuff. But I think as a team, the basketball team is incredibly cohesive. Like they're a really strong. They feel like they're a team, and even if they lose all the time, they feel like they're a team. And they're really supportive of each other in general. I mean, they're really good that way. It is hard in Chile because the difference in Chile is that I'm not really sure about like youth sports outside of schools, but in school, the Chilean schools do have year-round sports. So if you play basketball, you only play basketball. If you play soccer, you only play soccer.
Even from like an elementary?
I'm not sure about elementary, but I know in middle school, the teams they're playing against play year-round.
Okay.
And Nido does have seasonal sports, like more along the American method, and does not really encourage kids to play year-round sport for health and fitness reasons, because they think cross-training is more important and that you should diversify and not over-specialize until you get older. And so it is hard when they play these other teams because these other teams are much more competitive. So his basketball team did organize like off-season practices, much more laid back and not all that consistent, but they've had off-season practices to try to help them continue to build skills. So we'll see if it pays off this season. They had to divide into 2 teams this year because there were too many of them. So the other team had their first game today, and Christian's team has his first game on Friday.
Oh, that's right. And then this year, they're not divided into like an A and B team, right? They're more like just mixed, right?
Right. They did divide them into, well, they call it A and B, but it's a mixed. They didn't do all the good kids on one team and all the bad kids on the other, which they do typically do here, which is really annoying. So they did do a mixed skill team. So both teams have a chance. One team could be better than the other. It could be a toss-up. We don't know which team will do that yet.
Well, he's taller this year, so
a little bit.
So I'm also curious, like, I mean, again, it was more limited experience in the States with the kids, or in the most recent, the past 5 years have been here. But what differences you've seen with the parents in the States and the parents here? Because you're not only having Chilean parents, but because it's an international school, you have people from, I forget how many countries are represented, over 50 countries. So the dynamic with the parents that you have with the sports, and also because you're working at the school, I imagine you see a lot more than just a normal sport parent.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you see in the differences there and some things that might stick out to you about the reality here.
So I would say the parents here are much more laid back in the States. Sometimes too much so, in that they don't actually really support the teams, like they don't go to games. So there's that downside of it, but on the positive side, I haven't seen a lot of like parents getting upset at games, or I mean, occasionally a parent will complain if they feel like the coach isn't playing the kids fairly. Like the school does have a policy that kids should have fairly equal play time until high school. So even in middle school, the point is not to win, the point is that everybody plays. And you try to win as well, but you know, but if you have to choose between those 2 things, everybody should play.
Yeah.
But when that happens, parents will just talk to the coach directly, and it usually gets resolved. So certainly in the States, the parents were much more involved, at least at the younger ages. You have to be because you have to take them around, but I mean, much more involved and much louder. I also remember Christian's soccer coach was hilarious because the coaches were were a parent and one of the team members usually, and it was like one of the last games of the season, and his son scored, and he like went berserk. He was so excited. He was like, he scored, he finally scored, and he was like but it was totally unprofessional as the coach of the team. I mean, of course it's great that he scored and yay and all of that, but I mean, as the coach of the team, it was like very odd. But
well, but you have, so you bring up an interesting point also, is that in those sports outside of the school, it's usually just a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're going to go back to the States next year, to Chicago. Will you try to keep Christian involved in just school sports or maybe clubs? I know in the States it's much more common to be involved in like a private club.
Yeah.
Or like the travel team, if you will.
Yeah, I'm not sure for him in high school what the options will be, especially since the sport he likes is basketball, and as things go there, I'm not sure how competitive he'll be in the States. So my hope is really that he can just play on a team, like to keep it going, because I think it's good for him and healthy, and he likes The schools that we visited so far seem to have a variety of teams, which I understand to mean a variety of levels of teams, which means that he might be able to find a place for himself. So really my goal will be just that he keeps playing. Like for him and for my girls, like sports has not been something where they thought they would play competitively, you know, in college or anything like that. So I just hope he keeps playing.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Sure.
And yeah,